The mansion loomed before me like a grandiose specter wrapped in whispers of velvet and secrets. Its facade was a tapestry of forgotten beauty. White columns stood in elegant decay, their marbled skin cracked and weathered by years of neglect, and ivy clawed across stone walls with both desperation and pride. The air felt thick with solitude and untold stories, as though the mansion was breathing in memories and exhaling regret. As I stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaked beneath my weight, a tired orchestra welcoming yet another visitor who might fail to revive its soul. There was a curious stillness here, an unsettling calm that seemed to ripple through the air, vibrating softly in the chandeliers that hung from ceilings high above, casting their shadows like ghostly dancers lost. I couldn't help but wonder if one of these shadows might belong to the specter whose whispered legend had drawn me here. The skeptical writer, they had called me, accused me, really, during brief encounters in the village just beyond the twisted forest path that led to this enigmatic dwelling. The locals spun tales of apparitions and ancient curses, but people's stories often bloomed from fertile imaginations, or perhaps the intoxicating effects of isolation. My own imagination had its limits, yet here reality seemed to blur and sway at the edges, tempting my skepticism to falter. The library called to me first. Shelves lined every inch of the walls, dust motes floating in the warmth of golden afternoon light. Books whispered to one another, secrets exchanged in uses forgotten. I ran my fingers along spines, wondering which ones had felt the presence of those who had come before me. As I paused before a particularly old tome, something flickered in my periphery, a shift in the shadows, a suggestion of movement. I turned sharply, my heart quickening, but found only the steady gaze of untouched air. As I settled onto the threadbare couch with my chosen book, the world contracted to paper and ink. Hours slipped away while daylight dwindled, inching across the floor. The mansion, once an echo of solitude, now hummed with a reverence of time, each room silently coming alive with its own histories. Yet there was a gentle insistence in the atmosphere, beyond the wood and stone, beyond the warmth and shadow, a silent yearning almost. I closed my eyes, yawning back with a sigh, and there it was, a sensation beyond touch or sound, like a soft caress across my cheek. That presence, an uninvited, ethereal visitor, lingering just at the edge of my consciousness. More metaphysical than mysterious, ghosts were, after all, subjects of legend. And what was legend but a tapestry woven from threads of reality and fantasy? I chuckled, the sound hushed by the walls around me. Soon enough, I would be spinning tales of my own kind, the ones that dance at midnight while reason slumbers. Yet part of me insisted, wasn't there just a glimpse of truth in every fable? "Talking to yourself already, are we?" I murmured, gently mocking my own disbelief. The shadows stretched longer across the room, the day reluctantly giving itself over to night. Silence settled, edged once more, its breath deeper this time, its pulse rhythmic in its expectation. Within this surrender was a promise that somewhere in the stillness slumbered a connection. The ghost would watch silently, wrapped in shadow and the ephemeral sorrow of its curse. Wait, observe, remain unseen, yet somehow reach across the chasm that existed between knowing and not knowing. The embodiment of liminality, really, I mused, where worlds meet and hesitate, caught between hellos and goodbyes. A conspiracy lingered in the air, a sensible discord, as if this mansion held its secrets not in darkness, but in the intersections of light, a truth hidden in plain sight. Calculations flickered through my mind. I doltishly imagined bargaining with the specter, charming it with logic and reasoning, a revenge plan against its loneliness. It probably wouldn't work. Desperation, it seemed, played both sides of the same narrative. Night draped over the ancient estate, the howl of a distant wind woven into the fabric of every room. My lids grew heavy, as if I were being nudged gently toward sleep, to enter a realm where fantasies mingled freely, capturing truths often obscured by the waking world. Conversations drifted through my thoughts, strange and fragmented, a dialogue with something that couldn't partake in words shared with breaths. A strange peace found me in that moment, the mansion's gentle hand guiding me from doubt to acceptance, tipping me subtly into the delicate web of its mystery. I settled deeper into the cushions, the book slipping from my grasp, accepting the impossibility and the invisible presence that longed silently. The mansion did not only breathe stories, it lived them, telling those who would listen and, perhaps if the ghost wished so, seeking those whose hearts might hear beyond the ephemeral, where shadows aren't just shadows and feelings take shape amidst broken whispers and shattered lusters. As sleep swept me, the anticipation threaded itself through my dreams. Gently, almost imperceptibly, like the feather-light touch of fingers across a heart not yet ready to comprehend. Somewhere in those dreams, where logic yields to emotion, where essence can communicate despite barriers held firm by curses, maybe, just maybe, the skeptical writer would meet the longing specter and dare the unknown. A moment of absolute darkness claimed me before the first he. In that space, truth waited, tantalizingly close, poised on the precipice of revelation. Moonlight spilled across the room, casting delicate shadows that danced mischievously on the wallpaper. It was as if the mansion, in its infinite wisdom, sought to communicate through light what words could not encapsulate, a quiet symphony of whispers, urging me towards something indefinable but utterly captivating. I found myself at the precipice of dreaming, where reality blurred into fantasy, and the strange comfort of this place settled deep within my bones. A crackle in the hearth echoed softly, its embers painting the night with hushed warmth. My eyes lingered on the flickering fire, as pieces of this sprawling enigma reached out through the threads of consciousness, a gentle mental caress of presences felt but unseen. It was here, in the quiet hollows of nightfall, that these messages. Sleep began to arrive, heralded by the odd bouncing of objects across my desk, as if the pages of my lonely manuscript had become a playground for unseen hands. Sleep, filled with promises unspoken, wrapped around me like a tender embrace. This time, the dreams did not come softly. Rather, they unfurled boldly, leaving traces of hidden desires and cryptic messages. A picture frame tilted askew on the mantel, its forgotten dust scattering across the marble floor like breadcrumbs leading toward a mystery. The image inside, a haunting depiction of the forest that surrounded this place, spoke more than mere scenery. It was a kaleidoscope of meaning in the unruly chaos of nature itself. Voices, soft and unsure at first, became a lilting lull, half wishes colliding with half words, painting promises across the mist of my dreams. In this vivid limbo, a figure emerged. Not quite there yet, certainly present, bathed in the ethereal light of curiosity. My heart fluttered with the uncertainty of knowing something was near, yet just out of reach. A ghost, possibly, wrapped in the mansion's secrets, longing to dare the quiet courage only love can conjure. But as the night deepened, odd things began to happen, small, peculiar events that would challenge even a conspiracy theorist's sense of reality. A draft whispered across my neck when all windows remained closed. Books fell open to pages already marked with whispers of old secrets. With each occurrence, the mansion seemed to exhale, and in that breath were fragments of something broken. A curse, perhaps, entwining time's fickle threads. "Hey," I muttered sleepily to the ghost I hoped was listening, part talk show host, part explorer in the jungle of metaphysical truths. "If this is some Edwardian revenge plan, I should probably warn you. There's not much I know about cracking spells. Maybe let me know what page is the right one so I don't accidentally summon more of your friends." Sarcasm was my shield against the unfamiliar, yet beneath that lay a growing connection, one not built of laughter but of solemn understanding. This nightly communication tugged at the fabric of sanity with a promise dangled maddeningly close. There was sense in this nonsense, emotion within the cryptic. As dawn fought its way through the trees, an unsettling yet oddly comforting anticipation brewed within me. What might I do to break these chains one? If theory, marrying action with heart, to reach across the veil and capture this connection, this partnership in untold stories, how could I reckon with the safety of walls that held me snug, yet dared pull me into their mystery? A voice, not one of words spoken, but one felt in the loneliness between them, seemed present in the air. Did it feel rejected, dismissed by the skepticism that cloaked my thoughts? I wanted to scream back into the grotesque beauty of these whispers that fear was not rejection. Exploration plummets into its deepest corners, where both comfort and horror reside, testing boundaries and daring the heart to grasp more tightly than logic would permit. Suddenly, the moon slipped behind gathering clouds, and with it came a clarity unexpected. It wasn't solely my manuscript. It was the trembling story trapped inside. It was me. What a painfully intimate truth to realize the barrier that held us was as fragile as the longing that sought to cross it. In that moment, did I choose to listen, to embrace fully this cryptic dance with a specter who could never speak aloud its plea? A turning point, perhaps, or merely another puzzle piece to analyze, to write, to try and comprehend what, as I struggled with belief, was laying itself bare, cursed yet candid, in the night's tender shadows. The mansion stood silent against the stormy night, its looming silhouette a canvas for shadows that danced with the rhythm of my hesitations. Flickering candlelight cast shapes across ancient wood and cracked plaster, an accidental gallery of forgotten grandeur. I wandered through its maze of corridors, seeking answers whose existence might be a kind of betrayal to my own disbelief. Yet each room offered only fragments of stories, echoing in the hollow spaces between expectation and reality. Somewhere within, the ghost lingered, silent as history written in dust. I could sense him, his presence an unfamiliar comfort woven cleverly with dread, an intimacy born out of insistent curiosity. There was undeniable allure in that feeling, a sensation not easily dismissed, like a conspiracy, carefully brushed past logic's skeptical embrace. I chose the library tonight, an odd choice perhaps for company, but its shelves whispered of narratives and truths lost to time's indifferent march. Dust motes floated as if suspended in wonder, sinking slowly at my intrusion upon the quiet sanctuary. I brushed my fingers over the spines of books thick with old ink, searching. It was easier to focus on the cool grain of leather under my hands than admit a reality that defied understanding. There, nestled amidst the forgotten volumes, a journal caught my eye, bold in its simplicity. Its pages, though yellowed and fragile, called to me with an urgency that stilled my turmoil. I turned each page cautiously, like stepping on the cracks of uneven sidewalks, perpetually aware of what it might lie beneath. The entries spoke of a life entangled with sorrow and longing, visions of a love cursed to remain unfulfilled. Through the words of another, the ghost had begun to bear his vulnerability, a tragedy unfurled, detailing echoes of hope dashed against relentless fate, the agony of an existence bound in silence, screaming for connection. This, therefore, was the enigma my soul lingered upon, the artless vulnerability of emotions unearthed from solitude, yearning to be heard, for someone to understand. As the night unfurled its deepening shroud, I couldn't help but ponder aloud, allowing the heavy air to carry my voice where my heart was afraid to tread. It's hard to know if we are seeking the truth or merely running from it. My voice felt hollow, conveying a statement as inconclusive as the shifting moon shadows across the wooden floor. I felt answers cloaked in unspoken madness. Suddenly, there was a presence, a tender pressure in the atmosphere, like the aching anticipation before a storm's release. Yet it was no audible reply, but rather a sense, an obscure but undeniable acknowledgement. It was as if the ghost stood with me, sharing this moment suspended between the cold embrace of disbelief and the warm glow of possibility. There was yearning here, wrapped carefully in the cloak of spectral silence. "What do you want from me?" I barely whispered, my words a confession wrapped in the guise of questioning. It wasn't a simple request for answers. It was a plea, a declaration disguised amidst the tangled web of inquiry. The room felt alive around me, seething. Were we more than just two existences caught in a collision of fate and isolation? A subtle shift in the atmosphere spoke of unseen motion, a gentle brush of air, as if fingertips trailed against my skin in a gesture as soft as a secret. It wasn't fear now that tightened in my chest, but the intoxicating notion of desire acknowledged, a glimpse through the veil where hearts might grasp at connection despite worlds that whispered impossible. Unraveled from my reverie by the pulse of palpable presence, reality wavered just beneath thought's surface. This was where it happened, the resolution born from steadfast yearning, but tragically misunderstood. The tiniest hesitation, the shadow of disbelief cast upon this burgeoning attachment, was all the ghost needed to retreat. Re-hurt, rejected by vulnerability offered without sufficient acceptance. For a fleeting moment, the room was quiet, before the turn. An emptiness laid its claim, hollowing what once seemed an emerging bond. The ghost, my spectral companion, withdrawn into shadows that dared not contend with a heart tethered between wanting and fearing. A painful realization bloomed. Had my skepticism denied this connection, severing intimacy in its fragile infancy? The bitter quiet weighed heavy, knowledge pressing against my awareness with undeniable clarity, forcing through an admission barely whispered from within. If the truth had been embraced from the start, perhaps vulnerability wouldn't have turned upon itself, leaving us awash with solitude rather than the warmth of understanding. In that dichotomous, oh my! The only conspiracy left was the unresolved grief of missed opportunity, the revenge inherent in hesitation that held at bay the bridges stretching across the impossible. Would night's tender shadows again yield a chance, or remain a distant promise, eternally unrequited? For now, I stood alone, left with promises unspoken, a single tear unexplored. Could we ever find a way? The moonlight poured through the tall windows like liquid silver, casting soft shadows across the worn wooden floor. I stood there, listening to the quiet house, a symphony of whispers carried on the night air. The walls seemed to breathe with memories, and amid the echo of time, an almost invisible presence lingered, a spectral trace that stirred my curiosity as much as it unnerved me. In the midst of this uncertainty, he revealed himself, or rather the remnants of his existence. Another of his messages appeared, not in dreams this time, but etched in frost upon the window pane, delicate and temporary. Bound yet yearning, it said, a stark reminder of the veil that separated us. The weight of his words held me there, suspended between worlds, pressing against my heart with an intimacy unspeakable, unexpected. Ghosts weren't supposed to feel, weren't supposed to communicate in threads of longing. Or why had I believed that was only for the living? His vulnerability flickered like a candle in the winds of my skepticism, challenging what I thought I knew. At that moment, I felt an answering vulnerability of my own, an emotion buried under layers of doubt and fear finally surfacing. It tugged at something deep, something raw and essential, a connection formed in silence and shadows. He was bound by something tragic, a curse he couldn't escape, and all this time, I imagined him free, elusive, a phantom untouched by confines of grief. How wrong I was to think ghostly wife was devoid of suffering. I realized then our pain was perhaps one and the same, bound by solitude, prisoners of fate. His form appeared in the reflection as a mere shadow, but his presence filled the room with an intensity that defied reason. My breath caught as I dared to speak, my voice raspy in the quiet. What holds you here, tethered between this world and the next? There was no movement, only a whisper that danced on the edge of perception, intertwined with the rustling breeze. Love lost, and love denied, he replied, his voice like distant thunder, aching and reverberating with unshed tears. I wondered then if love was indeed the most treacherous of conspiracies, weaving subtle promises only to unravel them into sorrow. Could love seek revenge in haunting? Could his yearning be his own elaborate design against the void he could no longer touch? My eyes locked onto his shadowy figure, feeling, "I fear you," I admitted, surprising even myself with the confession. "Yet there's a comfort in your presence I can't understand." He seemed as startled by my openness as I was. "Comfort is deserved regardless of fear," he murmured, his face almost visible now, a visage fraught with memories, both a past and a promise. I longed to reach out, to bridge the abyss which separated us, not merely in life and death, but one born of misunderstanding and fear. His revelation tore through my defenses, unraveling the tangled cords wrapped around my heart. The complexity of his curse, the sheer tragedy of his existence, demanded a truth I hadn't dared before. "Is there a way?" I asked, desperation coloring my voice, a plea suspended between hope and fear. Utility. There was pause, a silence pregnant with possibilities, as if calculating the cost of vulnerability against the cruel certainty of fate. "Perhaps," he answered, his tone as soft as the moonlit sheen, "but not without consequence." Consequences, how neatly they encircle every action and desire, marking boundaries with calculations I dared not ignore. Yet his vulnerability, his truth revealed, burned within me, lighting a path forward amidst the murk of uncertainty. Facing him, all skepticism fell away, leaving raw and unbridled intention to reach across the divide before us. A risk loomed, reckless yet freeing, an enticement impossible to resist. Was it madness or genius to stand before the curse, daring to unravel the strands woven within shadows? "I want to help you," I promised. Ed, knowing I was tethered to an outcome undecidable and perilous. His shadow flickered briefly, almost as if caught in doubt, but it just as quickly found a resolve. "Then we shall dare fate together," he said, words woven with cautious determination and tenuous hope. In that exchange, the nights spent in quiet solitude transformed, forcing open a doorway between unknown worlds. Hearts laid bare, edged cautiously by vulnerability and strength, each of us found ourselves remade amidst the timeless twilight, an alliance forged in desire's daring light against the weight of tragedy. As the room fell back into silence, I felt the turning of a page, a beginning out of the ruins of before. Our story had been written in whispers and shadows, but now a chance to transcend awaited, daring us to embrace what was once unreachable. His presence lingered, closer than ever before, bound no longer just by pain, but by the promise of a bond unyielding, even if hidden from view. The room lay drenched in shadows, the fading light casting elongated shapes across the walls, like ghostly companions caught in perpetual motion. In the dim glow of the old wrought iron chandelier, I found myself staring at the threadbare rug beneath my feet, a peculiar artifact, neither belonging nor misplaced in this timeless manner. The rug bore designs that seemed both mundane and arcane, as if it were a map to a world just beyond the tangible, an odd relic telling tales only the dust could recollect. I breathed in the air, thick with the scent of ancient wood and musty pages, a symphony of time whispering forgotten secrets. It was then I felt it, him, hovering on the periphery of perception, his presence a gentle caress against the edges of my awareness. This ghost, this beautiful enigma, lingered like an unspoken melody. My heart quickened, a flutter of wings in a cage, torn between longing and fear, between the real and the impossible. "You're here," I murmured, my voice barely rising above a breath, afraid the words would shatter the fragile reality nestled between us. A ripple of cold passed through the room, an acknowledgement in the silence. There were whispers of conspiracies in his silence, ancient and unbroken, waiting for the right moment to unravel. I found myself drowning in that quiet, wanting to believe in the unprovable, that some essence of him could feel me and, perhaps, respond. An object on the mantel, a small, insignificant figurine, toppled without cause, a calculated descent that halted my breath. My eyes flicked to it, then to the chill forming in a spoon. I'm tired of pretending. My eyes sought the emptiness that held him, a void filled with expectation and vulnerability. Once, I would have scoffed at such an interaction. The rational part of me screamed impossible. But now, here, everything logical twisted into threads of something deeper. A shadow brushed past, and I knew it was him reaching out the only way he could. "I need you to know," I continued, words piecing themselves together with the precision of someone who knows the risk but is too far gone to care. "Stay. A bit longer. I'm in love with you." There, the confession, like standing on the precipice of night stretching deep and unknown. I had feared that admitting it would cast him away, but sometimes words were curses and cures all at once. His silence was both deafening and serene, a contemplative pause in the symphony of our interaction. The world seemed to hold her breath, waiting. Was he still bound by tragedy's cruel decree, or did the truth resonate through the ether, altering the tapestry of his curse? You and your reckless courage. The air trembled, heavy with the echo of possibility. Had I provoked anger or tenderness? I could not tell. But time stagnated as he allowed me to linger in that space with him, tethered by the unseen. In that moment of suspended reality, silence was a language, profound and eloquent. "I will help you," I spoke again, now stronger, awareness growing with the clarity of a promise shaped by love's audacity. The notion was reckless, coursing through my veins like wildfire, challenging the force, keeping him stranded between worlds. "We'll defy them together, whatever the cost." A sudden warmth flooded the space, shifting like the first rays breaching a dark horizon. It felt as if, for a fleeting moment, an age-old burden had lightened, like a soft confession of gratitude or shared relief. Perhaps I was merely a fool dancing with shadows, yet hope swelled within me, a rebellious glance toward an impossible harmony. The air around us pulsed with a soft, invigorating hum, as though our aligned intentions had rewritten some unspoken law of gravity. "Thank you," floated through my mind, carried on a tender wisp of thought not quite voiced. His gratitude surrounded me, a co-conspirator in our daring madness. Love, as they say, is a many-headed beast, not unlike the curses we aim to shatter. And in that room, steeped in history's breath, there was revolution in our desperation. In love's fortress of whispers and dreams, we stood, two souls close yet distant, bound by the cavalier hopes daring to transcend time's merciless edicts. And as the last remnants of light sighed against the approaching night, I felt something irreversibly shift. A pledge formed above the edge of sleep, promising that neither silence nor separation would ever be enough to break what was now undeniably meant. The turning point was upon us, and it whispered of futures unknown, waiting beyond the dawn. The mansion whispered to us, its ancient timbers gently creaking as if sighing in relief. The dim light of dusk settled between the curtains, casting dancing shadows upon the floor. The air seemed charged, vibrating softly with the energy of both anticipation and farewell. In this intimate embrace of the supernatural, my heart thudded in my chest, a wild symphony of fear and exhilaration. His ethereal form flickered before me, a ghost pinned by the binding chains of time. Yet there was a tangible warmth in the air, contrasting the chill one might expect from a spirit. Perhaps it was simply the stubborn nature of love, persisting even where it was never meant to tread. The connection between us throbbed, fragile yet tenacious, a conspiracy of heartbeats trying to synchronize against all odds. "I never thought we could come this far." My voice wavered slightly, like a fragile bridge across turbulent waters. The ghost's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with an indescribable sorrow that clutched at my heart, squeezing gently. He nodded slowly, a movement so full of understanding that words seemed almost redundant. "I didn't either," he confessed, his tone carrying that muted echo of those beyond reach, yet painfully near. It's odd how hope can flourish in the darkest crevices. I took a step closer, feeling the weight of centuries press upon my shoulders. Each moment in this mansion had been a stolen fragment of history. Yet here we were, scheming against fate itself. You know, love isn't just stopping a curse or breaking chains. It's what comes after, the new beginning. His expression, an exquisite mosaic of hope and resignation, told stories older than any written word. A kaleidoscope of possibilities shimmered between us, each shard reflecting dreams that were never dreamt, promises never spoke aloud. "What comes next for you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, despite the pressing urgency. The night seemed to hold its breath, watching us with ancient eyes, waiting to cradle whatever answer he could summon. "Freedom." His voice wrapped around the word, both yearning and content, as if he were tasting a forbidden fruit. "But what of you? I never meant for you to carry this burden." "Burden?" I chuckled softly, tracing patterns on the dust-laden air. "If loving you is a burden, then let it be the one worth bearing forever." And him flickered, momentarily brightening, as if the mansion itself responded to the intensity of emotion, a silent applause of old bricks and forgotten promises. His hand reached forward, fingers grazing the impossible barriers separating our worlds. My own hand mirrored his, and though our touch was separated by realms, the connection felt palpable. "I wish," he paused, contemplating the myriad wishes that might never find their place in reality. "I wish things were different." "Different," I repeated, weighing the word gently, like an undiscovered truth. His essence, so full of endurance and longing, whispered against my skin, a soothing balm in the tapestry of my solitude. Sometimes different isn't better. Sometimes it's just the unknown. I offered a gentle smile, one that might pun. "And if all we have is this, then it's enough." His eyes, two pools of haunted serenity, held mine in a gaze carved from unshed tears. "You give me strength," he confessed, the air shimmering with each word, a cascade of ethereal promises spoken beneath a moonless sky. In that charged silence, the mansion seemed to sigh, a soft exhale marking the end of an era. His chains, invisible yet potent, slowly dissolved, each link turning into tendrils of fading mist. The curse unraveled its clutch on his essence, a revolution born from simple, pure devotion. "Go," I urged tenderly, watching as his form began to dissipate, merging into the shadows that once hid his torment. "Live in the freedom that was denied." As the last vestiges of his presence intertwined with the night's indigo cloak, he offered me a smile, ages carved into that ghostly visage, an expression of love transcending the heartbreak of separation. "Thank you," he murmured, each syllable a soft caress to my spirit. Seconds stretched into eternities, tangible promises dancing upon the edges of reality and dreams. For the first time, I felt him not as someone cursed, but as a soul willing to fight against cosmic isolation, a fellow conspirator who dared defy ancient statutes for a moment of genuine connection. Perhaps, as he faded into freedom's embrace, I wasn't releasing him, but rather freeing my own heart, untethering it from fear and doubt, allowing love's unyielding force to guide both our paths. And in that eternal moment, whispered between shared breaths and silent vows, loneliness shifted to tenderness, and the mansion, an ally to our conspiracy, became a keeper of our sacred secrets. What lay beyond was uncertain, a future uncharted, yet woven with the sincerity of two spirits once divided by time's relentless march. As I turned away, a soft, rebellious smile played upon my lips, a testament to a love that had broken the chains and danced with shadows, never to be shackled again.